Good afternoon, everyone. Illinois Extension is happy to host another Illinois Office of Broadband update with you. We are co-hosting this with the Illinois Broadband Lab. I'm Nancy Ouedraogo, a state specialist in community and economic development with Illinois Extension. We are happy to welcome Matt Schmidt, Deputy Director for Broadband within the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. He administers the state's Office of Broadband. And Shubika Agarwal, she's coordinator at the Illinois Broadband Lab. We are both very grateful to you for being here, and we thank you for your time. Shubika and Matt, they're going to cover some updates and information about our state and federal broadband maps and the mapping process for Connect Illinois, our state infrastructure grant program. So again, we're just very happy to get this information today, and we're looking forward to the presentation and the Q&A with you both. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Matt now.
All right. Thank you, Nancy. And thanks everybody for carving out some time on a Friday afternoon in the middle of June to talk about broadband, digital equity, and mapping. We're really excited to share with you some information that we have on our state mapping efforts, as well as updates from the federal side. And importantly, how both of them really tailor into what we're doing with the Connect Illinois Broadband Grant Program, both now and also into the future. And so feel free to be active in the chat. We want to make sure that we're addressing all of your questions. I think you're going to find that what we're sharing with you today is very familiar. We covered a lot of this content last month when we had a similar webinar, but we just feel as though this is an important topic for us to revisit and give folks a chance to maybe hear it a second time, or to answer questions and engage with us in the hour ahead. And so with that said, Nancy did a really nice job of laying out what we're planning to do in the hour ahead. We'll talk a little bit about the latest with the Federal Communications Commission broadband maps and data. Likewise with the FCC broadband funding map itself. Very new approach the FCC has taken over the past year to collecting data and to creating a map. And the second, I guess, iteration of that map was recently posted. We'll be previewing some of what's to come, both on that map and also with our Illinois broadband map. And then that's the third item here, talking a little bit about our own map at the state level, that Illinois broadband map. And then I think it's really important that we take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Connect Illinois Round 3 and the merit and mapping review processes that are underway right now. We've got a big deadline coming up of June 30th, both for new applications for Round 3 and also for folks who would like to participate in the mapping review challenge process. And so towards the end of the call today, we'll talk a little bit more about that, and certainly stick around for any questions that folks have. And then Shubika is going to do a great job of bringing to life some of this great mapping that we have both on the front end and the back end of the time together today. And as I had mentioned at the outset, we want your questions. We really want to make this as engaging and useful for you. As much as I love these, Nancy and Shubika, it's really the audience that we do this for. And so make sure that you get your questions asked however you would like to do that. And so without further ado, we'll just launch right in, and I will pass the baton to my esteemed colleague, Shubika. Take it away.
Sure. Thanks, Matt. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. So I'm going to start off with some of the resources that the FCC has recently put together, the broadband national map and the funding map, and go with some of that. So this again might be recap. Some of it might be recap from the previous webinar that we had. The FCC National Broadband Map, it's basically a requirement through the Broadband Data Act that the FCC had to put out these new availability maps in order to make decisions with the BEAD program that's administered through the NTIA. So again, a quick review of the timeline. The first data collection for the FCC maps was last year, June 31st, 2022 to September 2022. And this data was published with the first set of maps coming out in November last year. This was when they used the first version of the fabric, and the availability challenges were open to public and also state agencies and local governments and providers at that time. After that, there was a second round of broadband data collection, this time with version 2 of the fabric, which was from January 2023 to March 1st, 2023. And all of this data is now The second release of the FCC national maps, which uses the version 2 of the fabric, and the data is as of December 2022. This was released on May 30th, so just 2 weeks from today. Next slide. So just a quick recap of what the state's participation in the bulk challenge processes through the FCC. So we participated in both of them with the fabric challenges. In the first round, we submitted nearly 87,000 challenges, of which 7,763 were accepted. And the map on the right basically shows the places where it was accepted. The acceptance rate also kind of depends on how FCC defines the broadband serviceable locations. So that kind of impacted some of that. And, it was a learning process on how to go about this. So in the second round, we submitted an additional 54,000 something locations in March this year, and that's still pending FCC's review, but the fabric is constantly being updated, and there are new locations coming in, and the additional locations that shouldn't be on the map are being deleted as well. So that's like a work in progress, and the office is definitely working towards ensuring that we on our end can do everything to ensure the accuracy of the fabric for Illinois. Then we have the service availability challenges. So we submitted a total of 40,771 service availability challenges as of March 2023. This was based basically on the field validation efforts, the previous state maps that Illinois had been collecting, and also identifying some of those individual one provider locations, which were mostly reliant on fixed wireless and copper services, because I've been hearing about reliability concerns with those. So the state really putting together this challenge, and it's really nice that almost 99% of our challenges, so 40,751, were upheld after discussions with ISPs and FCC adjudication. So that is where we stand at with the challenges that we've participated in. Next slide. So in this, we're basically going to talk about how the map has changed with the new release. We see that there has been a lot of revisions and reporting from fixed wireless providers, and including the challenges that we had submitted. We now see that the total number of broadband serviceable locations for Illinois has increased from the first version, which had 4.131 million locations, to now 4.168 million, which is nearly an addition of 37,000 something locations to the map. Our unserved numbers have increased, again, would do based on like the new reporting and the successful availability challenges that the state was able to put forward. So our unserved numbers, which are represented on like in the pink color on the maps, the first maps basically show the availability based on the June 2022 data. And then the one on the right is for availability based on the December 2022 data. So the unserved has increased from 5% to 6%. The underserved has gone down. And as we can see on the maps, it's basically the north, western portions and the central west, where we see a lot of the blue has now turned pink. So like, the underserved really becoming unserved in some of those areas. And there's definitely a lot more changes at, the more granular place level sort of thing. So there's definitely changes there. And then our served numbers have sort of also increased from 90% to 91%. And the numbers are 3,729,000 to now 802,000. So that is some of the changes. And again, at the granular level, there's going to be more details on what that looks like. The next slide. Yes, and now the FCC broadband funding map. So this is, again, this was released by the FCC on May 15th, essentially, again, to help with basically identifying locations that wouldn't have to be covered through BEAD. So here on the screenshot, we see the different programs that are covered through the FCC broadband funding map. It covers program to the FCC, the NTIA, the Rural Utilities Service, and the US Department of Treasury. At this time, Matt, I'd like to share my screen just to like quickly go over this map online. So yeah, let me try and do that. So as I mentioned, we'll be also sharing a link to these if you want to later take a look at it. You can use this map to basically look at funding available at the address level. But then for now, for today's purposes, we'll also look at the other sort of tools that this map basically shares with us. So again, there's the location summary where we can add an address, or we could just type in a place and Chicago for now. And this again zooms in to the location, and it has the different sort of legends for this overlays the availability as well as the federal funding data. So you'll see if it's just green, there is coverage, but it's not funded through any of the federal programs. And when you click on a point, you can see more details. And the zoomed out version, the colors basically show what percentage of the units do not have any kind of federal funding or availability. So that's essentially through the location summary. And I think this can be a pretty good tool for ISPs as they start to plan for, like, where they'd like to utilize BEAD funding for. Then there's the funding summary. There are a bunch of different ways for how you can filter things out. If you want to look at specific programs through different agencies, for example, if you want to do the FCC and we want to do RDOF, for example. So you'd have that in. It could be for a specific project. If you want to look that up, for now, we'll just leave that blank. And we can also look up a specific provider. We can type in the technology. So let's go for all wired and licensed fixed wireless and speeds greater than equal to 25/3 so that it's served, and also change the program start and end dates and things like that and apply. So then this essentially changes the map, so like where is funding available for the different filters that we have created, and it shows the total funding. If we zoom into specific locations, this number doesn't change. It basically, the map's based on the filters that we have set. And then when we zoom in, we'll just again get a sense of what percentage of PSLs in this area would be funded through the program or the provider that we have selected. Again, there's more to explore with this. And then we have the data download, which is, again, you can select specific programs. Let's do RDOF again. And so then it lists the individual programs, and it has the Excel file and the geospatial files for each of these if you want to add that to a mapping tool and further analyze it. And then there's also the unserved and unfunded locations for each of the states, which has the location ID. So you'd have to have access to the fabric in order to then map it to plot it on a map and then use it for further analysis. So that pretty much sums up, most of the tools of this. The state broadband office is also, like, with our mapping vendor, working on analyzing some of this data so that we can incorporate it in the state maps. And so now I'll again go back to the slides and share some updates on the state map. Just want to make sure we're seeing the slides all right.
Looks good.
Okay, awesome. So yes, that's a good segue into what's happening with the state map. As you might already know, we have a state map that's been active since June 2021. We try and update it every 6 months, and the version that's currently online is based on November 2022 data. For the new set of maps, we had reached out to providers in the state from March to May this year, and all of that data is now going to be incorporated into the new maps. And that should be online sometime end of June. So like in the next 2 weeks. What's to be expected? So the screenshots here are just like, to help visualize some of what this might look like. And these are not like Illinois specific maps, but it's going to be more location based, more like the FCC maps that we have seen. So there's going to be the fabric data on there, and we're going to share availability by different, like, what speeds are available, the unique providers, what's the density of providers at that location, the technology that they offer. And also, like with the federal funding map that the FCC has published, we're using some of that, and we'll try and make it easier for our users to get a sense of where federal funding has been deployed within the state. There's going to be features to look up specific addresses, or you could just point at certain places on the map to look up, what service looks like and what options are available at that location. On the second picture on the right, we see there's an example for like dynamic binned layers to see the density of unserved and underserved areas. And then we'll have similar layers for like density and the number of providers, that sort of information. And there's also going to be like similar tools where you'll be able to see some of this data aggregated for different geographies, like county level, the legislative district level, school districts, and some of that. And there'll certainly be more updates on what that's going to look like, and how that's going to change the map moving forward. So now bringing all of this together, because we'll also have the BSL data, the broadband serviceable location data on the state map. We're doing this because we're also preparing for the BEAD program. So we want to kind of make sure that all the places in the state that have access to like federal funding, or that have been or will be funded through the Connect Illinois program. Another note here is the CPF funding in the future is also going to require submission of the FCC location IDs. So that is, working towards making sure we kind of cover the map as we go, and we're not like overspending in areas where there's not specifically need for this kind of funding, and just being up to date with where there is service, where there's funding, and then where there's need for more. So we've been working with, we've been reaching out to providers and applicants who have submitted applications for Connect Illinois Round 3 to get access to the fabric location IDs, just to get a sense of what locations have been served or are proposed to be served as part of their applications. So thank you so much for working with us on that. I think we're still in conversation with a few of you, but then it's, our recommendation is just stay current with the CostQuest fabric licenses so that this data sharing between the states and ISPs can be easier. And there's certainly going to be more information about this from NTIA and CostQuest themselves. So we'll again try to keep you posted on how that's going. And we're always, happy to work with sort of how things are with you, if you can share that right now or not. And there have been instances where we're working with shape files that providers have shared that we can then use on our end to extract the fabric location IDs for now. So yeah, there are ways on how we can work towards this and ensure that we sort of have the right information of what's covered through these different projects that are being funded. With this, I'm going to pass it on to Matt for information about Round 3 and the mapping review.
All right. Thanks so much, Shubika. And before I jump into updates on Connect Illinois, maybe we should pause. Are there any quick questions or long questions regarding the great information that Shubika just shared? It might be timely just to take a moment and look at the federal piece before we delve into the state side. All right. Well, feel free to be active in the chat box. We'll look for your questions. Otherwise, I'm sharing my screen here. Hopefully you can see this. This should be a familiar site. This is the Connect Illinois Broadband website. And what we have here is essentially our landing page. I just got to make sure that I'm sharing the right screen here. 1 second here, folks. I'm just going to level set here and make sure I'm sharing the right screen. I updated my slides at the last minute. I want to make sure we capture what I've got for you.
Looks good.
All right, great. So essentially what we have here, Connect Illinois website, the one-stop shop for all things broadband mapping and data. As we advance the slide, folks, I'm having a little bit of trouble here. So just 1 second here. All right, we'll just take it right here. Okay, so one big piece to this website is all the data in the mapping, the resources that we have regarding our broadband grant programs and how you can participate in them. Mapping is an incredibly important part of that. And right now we're in the midst of our mapping review process with the next wave or quarterly application of the Connect Illinois Broadband Grant Program. And so, folks, I've said this a lot in these sorts of webinars, but just want to level set. We've got round 3 open right now, $350 million available. We've received over 100 applications over the past year, actually pushing 140 in terms of what's come in and what we expect. And we are in the midst of reviewing those projects on a merit review basis, and also looking at how they fit into the map and how they complement the service that is already available. So mapping both at the state and federal level, really important to understanding how best to deploy these resources and make smart investments. And so the merit review process, it's prescribed in our notice of funding opportunity. And so we've got some experts who read through each one of our applications that come to us that are eligible for grant funding, and we score them. And so more detail on the merit review process is best served in a different webinar, not focused on mapping. But nonetheless, we've got our 7 categories. Points range from, well, I guess below 100 to 200 would be a perfect score. We get a lot in that ballpark between 100 and 150. And so discerning the good from the great is a really important part of this. Some of the applications do require a little bit of additional work on the part of an applicant. So we'll give them back to an applicant for additional work. That is happening right now. At the same time, we have our mapping review process where we look at the mapping files that are submitted along with an application. Shubika referenced that. They can come in different forms, shape files or others. And basically what we want to do is we want to work with incumbent providers, impacted communities, and other stakeholders and get as much feedback as we can on how a proposed project would complement the array of service available throughout the state and address needs in that given area. And so we want to absolutely make sure that our maps are accurately reflecting service that is available. So that's a big part of it. We also want to empower local governments and communities and Illinoisans to weigh in and let us know if a proposal meets their needs and is consistent with a vision or work that has taken place at the community level. So that community voice is really important. We want to make sure that we empower local communities to have a say. Nobody's got veto authority necessarily, but the point is we want to hear from you. And so this isn't just about providers, it's about all stakeholders throughout Illinois. And the process is pretty simple. We're just asking those stakeholders who'd like to participate in the mapping review process to send us an email. And in the subject line, put broadband mapping or mapping review, and just a quick description of the project. In our map, we have projects identified by number. That would be ideal if you can actually identify a project, but we'll work with you. We want to get your feedback. We want to be reasonable. And so again, that kind of feedback, that conversation, it's all started by sending an email to broadband@illinois.gov. And so our notice of funding opportunity for the first time ever in round 3 here actually specifies the steps that we take in this mapping review process. And so right now we are at the point right now where we're somewhere in there between 1 and 3, where the proposed project areas have been published in our map, the Illinois Broadband Map. And again, we'll drop a link that'll take you right to the mapping review layer. We have published relevant deadlines. So basically by June 30th, we want to hear from those stakeholders that would like to submit initial feedback. So basically raise a flag and say, hey, we've got some input on this project or another. And then essentially what we do is we acknowledge receipt of that initial feedback. And then we do some analysis in-house. And before we make any determination, we're going to communicate both with the applicant to give them an opportunity to provide additional information and the stakeholder that's providing that mapping review feedback. And so that whole process takes place before we announce any grant awards in round 3. And so again, just to highlight, between now and June 30th is the opportunity for that initial feedback to start the conversation with the Office of Broadband. We will, at minimum, acknowledge that we have received your feedback, but we very likely will begin the internal analysis In fact, we have on every mapping review feedback submission to date, and start that back and forth with the applicant and the feedback submitter. So hopefully that makes sense. What we really want to do is be flexible, give folks an opportunity to participate, but also be very clear where we are in the process and how we arrive at a certain determination. And so again, I think as we roll into July, we'll see more and more of the back and forth where it's merited, and then clear communications before any grant awards are made. And so again, this is spelled out in the notice of funding opportunity for round 3. And again, if you've got any feedback or questions, broadband@illinois.gov is the one-stop shop for starting the conversation or getting some clarity on how the process works. And one point that I just want to emphasize is to participate in the mapping review process as a provider. You also must participate in our mapping and data collection process with our mapping vendor, Connected Nation. So they will be making requests. They do several times a year. I'm copied on just about every one of those emails. If you're a provider, we absolutely want to get your mapping data from you. And we're flexible in terms of the different ways that you could submit it. Simply passing along what you submit to the Federal Communications Commission works for us, not asking you to do any more work. And so with that said, just want to highlight where updates will be made on our website. We have a separate link or tab on this vertical menu to the left here devoted to mapping review. And as we get deeper into the process, we will have updates here. One thing that I think we want to be very careful and clear on is as we move from one quarterly window to another and more applications are in front of us, being very clear about which applications are up for merit review, which ones have been taken down, and which projects are new to the fold, just so we can all keep things straight. And so this website, along with our newsletter and direct email from our office, 3 different ways to stay informed on where we are in the mapping review process. And I might be able to twist Nancy's arm and do another mapping webinar here in the future on the mapping review process as the process moves forward. But the whole point is we're trying to communicate with folks in different ways and make ourselves as accessible as possible. Really proud of the process that we've stood up here, and we'd like to continue it moving forward. So again, mapping review, this is the tab and the web page on our website. One thing I just wanted to mention here in the conversation is kind of where we stand with Connect Illinois Round 3. It was opened in January of 2022. We hit pause for about a year to complete administrative rule for the General Assembly. And in March, our rule was adopted. And in April, we resumed in full the round 3 process. Again, that involved both the merit review and the mapping review, which is currently underway, as well as an invitation for additional applications. We've always accepted applications throughout this process, but now we really want to emphasize now is the time to submit your applications for round 3. As you can see here in 2022, we received a total of 106 applications. 29 of those were withdrawn because a lot changed in that year during the pause. And so we gave applicants a chance to either update their budgets and timelines, hold pat, or withdraw altogether. Out of that 106, 77 applications are remaining from 2022, and 61 of those applications included revised budgets. And so we wanted to be accommodating of those applicants from 2022 and give us current budgets, current timelines. So that kind of constitutes what we consider to be wave 1, what came to us and what has been confirmed from 2022. And then we set a deadline for our next quarterly window of 2023 of May 1st. We received 30 applications on or before May 1st in 2023. And combined, that 107 applications is what is in front of us right now, what we're focusing on. And I'm going to pause. We actually did have one removed, and so it's 106, but the point is that's how the math is adding up. 77 remaining from 2022 rolled over, 30 new ones before May 1st, 2023. And that gives us a very full basket of applications that are both in the merit review process and the mapping review process. So when you go in and you visit that website, you'll see all those projects there. We continue to accept applications, and we also have a June 30th deadline for the next wave of application submissions. So June 30th, 2023, it's a big date. That's when you can submit your initial feedback for the mapping review process for all the projects that we received on or before May 1, 2023. Also, it's the deadline for new applications for this quarterly window. Hopefully that makes sense. One point that I just really want to hammer home for any communities, providers, other stakeholders who might be involved in a future grant application is that, yes, we have received a lot of applications, 140 that we are aware of that have either come in the door or that are being worked on right now, totaling over $800 million. So we're oversubscribed. But we've got about a year plus to move these dollars, and we want to make sure that we give all applicants an opportunity to put their best foot forward. And so now this summer into the fall is a great time to be working on and submitting additional applications for round 3. The good news is we think a lot of this work is going to dovetail naturally into round 4, which is underwritten by the federal broadband equity access and deployment dollars included in the bipartisan infrastructure law. And so if folks hear about BEAD and that great opportunity for $1 billion or so coming to Illinois, that essentially is going to be round 4 of Connect Illinois, and it's about a year and a half away. That being said, we want to pace ourselves so the engagement continues to grow. We build momentum, and together we're getting this right. We're going to fill in that map and reach our goals of universal connectivity around the state. So I'm saying more about Connect Illinois here than maybe some of you bargained for today. But this is the context in which the mapping review process operates. That's why we're doing the mapping review after all. And again, point of emphasis, now is a great time to keep working on your round 3 applications and submit them. I look at round 3 as a good opportunity for a lot of us to get to know each other, because round 4 is going to be even more aggressive in terms of the timeline, condensed deadlines. And so we really want to get familiarity with the processes in how we plan to make decisions going into round 4. So now is a great time to engage with us on broadband and broadband mapping. And so that takes us to the Illinois broadband map. I know Shabika had mentioned a little bit about this at the outset. I'd like to turn the mic back over to Shabika to talk a little bit about what can be found in the Illinois broadband map, and specifically how to make that mapping review layer in aspect of our broadband map work for you at this time. And so Shabika, please take it away.
Sure, thanks, Matt. And again, I'm going to share my screen here. So here's the broadband map. Again, the Illinois broadband map. We'll be sharing a link to how to get to this one, where you automatically get to the grant eligibility tab, which basically has the mapping review layers. So firstly, the one in green shows the projects that we have received to date, and the one in red is all the eligible areas based on data that we had as of November 2022, and it was updated in March 2023 as well for some of the providers. So that is what has been used to come up with the eligibility layer, which is any area in the state that lacks 100 by 20 wireline before any state grants, which includes previous round 1 and round 2 Connect Illinois grants, and also the Reconnect grants in the state. So that is what eligibility looks like for any of the projects. When you click on the project, there's going to be information, the name of the project, the grant amount that they have requested, the location, which is essentially the county, and a description of the project, which covers the locations that it's going to cover. We're also going to be adding some more detail into this about the type of project and the category of project. As you know, there are 3 categories with broadband access, broadband innovation, and urban broadband. So we're going to add that information, like what category the specific project falls into. And we'll also add information about whether it's a last mile project or a middle mile project. So that being said, the mapping review is essentially going to be most helpful for the broadband access projects. And now, some of the other layers that you could use that would be helpful in just navigating this map. So down here, we have the general tab, which has the boundary layers. So if we select the county boundaries, that just, brings all of that, and that just makes mapping and getting a sense of where things are at a little more easier. We also have the mapping review layer available for download, which is right on the right side here. So the potential grant eligibility file is available as a shapefile, and the existing applications that we've received for the first round are available as a KMZ file that can be downloaded through the link right here. So that's the first few things. As you are looking at this, some of the other layers that might be helpful. Firstly, in the federal tab, and again, some of this is grayed out because it'll be visible only when we zoom in. So we zoom in and we see that, you can add information about areas that might have received funding through various federal programs like ACAM. So this now, shows up those layers, and there's going to be information about the provider that received the funding and how many locations in this, with this block are basically covered as part of that funding. With Connect Illinois round 3, there's some flexibility with regards to funding areas that have already been funded through federal programs, but that'll again be reviewed on a case-to-case basis. And based on the 30-something challenges that we've received so far, we do have some where, programs are either funded through one of the federal programs, like we have ACAM, then we have CAF information here, and then we also have RDOF information here. So again, if you click on this layer, it populates the map, and you can also toggle layers on and off to make better sense of it. If you want to just close the mapping review and look at the federal funding and then toggle it back on, you can certainly do that. We have draw tools on here. So if you do not want to use like your own KMZ file or shape files, then you can certainly just use tools within the mapping system itself. So if there's like a problematic area where you see overlap, you could just maybe, place a point or maybe draw a circle to just, mark certain locations that you'd like to challenge or some areas that you'd like to bring to our notice. If you want to bring in your own files into the system, you can also do that through the add data functionality here. There's a file option, and you can import shapefiles, CSVs, or KMLs that you might already have for your project areas in here. So that can also add to this. And once you have your sort of area ready, let's maybe just add in. There's lines and things that you can add. So yeah, if once you have all the information you want to convey, you can also export the map. So it's the option right here. It could be a PDF or an image, whatever works for you. And then you can add that to your email that you're sharing with us for the mapping review challenge that you're submitting. So that's some of the information. We know through the challenges that we have received so far, there's been a mix of, the kind of evidence that we are receiving, as I mentioned, like screenshots of the map or map that has been exported from here, or just the service availability KML or KMZ files that providers already have. As I mentioned, we had collected the new data from providers in March to May this year, and there's soon going to be an update. We kind of realized that there's usually a lag of 4 to 6 months with how current the broadband data is. So essentially, again, the mapping review is the chance for you to let us know any of the areas that you might already be serving, and that will just keep us updated on where there is and is infrastructures available or not. And then the other layer that I also want to mention is the previous Connect Illinois funded project. So that's in the state projects tab here. We have information about the round 1 and round 2 projects that show up in blue here. And again, when we click on them, there's more information about who was funded and the grant amount and the area that they are covering through the project. So that covers most of the information. If there's more information, if you're preparing for a grant application, then there's statistics information through the ACS here that can be accessed if you want to add more details to selection of the project area and all of that can be helpful. So, and there's also information about querying data. So for example, with the county data, we do have access by county for the different speeds and by different technologies, so wireline only. And then the first set is basically with wireline and fixed technologies. And there's the Access tab if you want to specifically look at, different speeds that are offered in these areas. So if you want to look at probably 100 by 20 wireline, so it populates all the areas in orange, basically have access to at least, and I think I click 100 by 100, let's do 100 by 20. Yeah, and this was revised in March. So that shows up on the map. So yeah, it depends on, the data that you want to look at and how you can compare the existing availability, what's proposed, and if there are any overlaps with areas that you might already be serving. So that's some of the different ways of looking at this map. Initially, we'd also mentioned that the map's going to have an update with like a more location-based data set. That's at this point going to be mostly an update, like a layer that can be turned on and off. And we'll try and make sure that there's no significant changes to how you can access any of these layers that can help inform or, prepare for your mapping review challenge. All of that is going to remain pretty much the same through the end of the month. So yes, if you have any questions also with regards to accessing the map now until the end of the month, let us know. And if there are going to be changes, we'll certainly keep you posted on how we're putting out this information. So yes.
Great.
Matt, if I'm missing out on anything.
No, that's great, Shubik. I think you've really brought to life our Illinois broadband map in ways in which these different layers, the data sets can be used to understand what's going on out there. A couple points, I guess I would just emphasize, and basically we're at the stage right now where we're going to open it up for questions from everybody. If you do have any questions for Shubika right now, well, we have the mapping demo available. We definitely can take that time to run through that. Otherwise, I think you're going to see our Illinois broadband map increasingly start to look like the latest FCC map. And so that location data that you saw on the FCC map when Shubika was running through those slides at the outset, that's what our map is going to start looking like. In Illinois here, this is the first thing our Office of Broadband did when we opened our doors in 2019, is getting that mapping, that data collection effort started. So we've been at this for almost 4 years now. And we feel like it is a strategic advantage for us, for all of us, in understanding where broadband is and is not. The good news is the FCC has upped their standard, and because they're collecting data that is location specific, it makes it a lot easier for us to do the same thing. And so we're going to be able to have location specific data and maps that show those broadband serviceable locations, those BSLs. And that's going to be the challenge for us all as a state in the next couple of years, is showing the National Telecommunications Information Administration how we are going to extend connectivity, or at least access to every one of those BSLs through our map, which is going to bear a striking resemblance to the FCC's map. And so again, the mapping, the data collection, the analysis that follows, all of that is going to be in concert with the FCC, and we're only going to get it right if we're able to work closely with our provider community here in Illinois, as well as local governments and communities and stakeholders around the state. And so with that said, I could go on and on about mapping. I'll stop there. If there are any questions for Shubika or for me, we'd be happy to field them right now.
Wonderful. Yep. We've definitely received some questions, and reminding everyone now's the time to get that question in. We have about 15 minutes here, and we think we can cover a good amount of these. So going to go ahead and start that now. We've had some early questions regarding the mapping review and the Illinois map. There was a question on when the data would be downloadable.
Shubika, you want to take that?
Yes, sure. That's going to be sometime end of this month. And again, because there are license agreements with respect to how to use the fabric and what part of the fabric can be made publicly available, that's going to look slightly different as to what data would be available for download. But we'll certainly have more details once we have the location-based data on the map, and we also have some of that data available for download. So yes, more updates to come, but there is certainly going to be information that will be available for download that can be used by local governments and ISPs, or preparing for funding.
Great. Thanks so much. It sounds like, work doesn't stop during summer, and it can be expected in, a few weeks, and folks can get that. get that data downloaded. And of course, I'm happy to host another session when we can move forward and talk more about further implications. And speaking of which, we had another question about if you could just sort of share your thoughts and insights on what implications for counties are regarding the changes to maps.
Well, I think the maps are going to allow for counties, local governments, other stakeholders that really have a stake in understanding what's going on, the opportunity both to interact with various data sets and layers in real time, and again, drive down to like the actual broadband serviceable locations. So you're not left to guess how many, households are on a given block or what exactly you're looking at. And increasingly, you'll have an opportunity to download those data sets and play with them and incorporate them into your own analysis on your software. And so I think the point is giving our local communities the same data and the tools that the Federal Communication Commission has, that the National Telecommunications Information Administration has, that our Office of Broadband has, is going to be really helpful in allowing them, I think, to have a stronger voice, to plan, to be part of the conversation, and to advocate for outcomes that are in alignment with their community goals and visions. And so all of that stuff is true. I really look forward to being able to share as much of this with our stakeholders across the state as possible. And that runs the gamut. Broadband providers, local governments, schools, libraries, regular Illinoisans who really like this stuff, that want to be in the know and want to make sure that we get this moment right. So that's my view. Shabika, do you have anything, from your perspective that you're really looking forward to empowering communities with on the mapping front?
I think you kind of covered that, Matt. And again, just having that sense of a more locational sort of data set and being able to compare what's on the FCC maps with what's on the state maps. So like if you have your GIS teams kind of working on this, there's going to be like comparable data sets now at this point. Before this, the Illinois map was mostly, area based, so like different areas that were covered. There was probably, chances for overstatement in that case. But with this, we're also getting more granular and like, yes, the providers kind of attesting to these are the locations that we know we serve. So there's definitely seems to be like more accuracy in terms of like, what data is shared. So yeah, that's going to be a plus.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it sounds like the ISPs are really, they're open and sharing information about their existing infrastructure, and wondering if there is an implication for ISPs who maybe aren't submitting the information, and is there an implication for when they partner with the grant applications, and if they haven't yet submitted their existing infrastructure information to Connected Nation. Could you address that quickly?
Well, I think there's no better time than right now today to start collaborating with us. And so we've had Connected Nation as part of our team for about 3 years now. And so twice a year, they make overtures to our known providers throughout the state asking for data. And if there's one reason or another that a provider has not submitted data in the past, now is a great time to get into it. And so we do make it easy in terms of the kinds of data that we accept. And there is a non-disclosure agreement available to providers so that data that you provide to Connected Nation in many cases can be aggregated. And so you can keep some of your, trade secrets or proprietary information to yourself or to Connected Nation. That being said, I think we're just seeing a whole new approach to mapping at the national level, where I think we're really digging deep on, okay, what exactly is available, where, who is the provider, where, what technology available, and how. And so, I think it's changed a lot just in the last several years. And so I would just say in Illinois, we're trying to be very respectful of all those concerns that a provider might have, but also we really want to work with you. And the critical first step to doing that is to collaborating over data and mapping. And so shoot me an email at broadband@illinois.gov if you've got any questions about that data collection effort. Otherwise, we just really do encourage all providers to participate. And thank you to so many of you who have. We've had a really strong participation over the years.
It's wonderful. We have some other questions, but one more question related to this is, at what point during a current project under construction should a provider submit that data?
Yeah, I think the thing is, if you're submitting data, we've got field verification crews that get around the state year round. They're making sure that our projects that we fund through grants are built to spec. We also get to areas to make sure that data submitted to us is accurate, just in case, as we triangulate with other data sources, there's any inconsistency, we're getting as full a view of what's going on as possible. So I would say if you're going to submit data to Connected Nation, it should be data that is reflecting where your service is available now, or where it could be available within 10 business days. That's kind of standard protocol. But if you have plans, let Connected Nation know, let the Office of Broadband know. And that really dovetails into, I think, an important part of this planning in the next year, with the $1 billion plus in BEAD funding and other resources available for Connect Illinois Round 4 and beyond, is trying to work with our provider community to understand where they, as individual providers, might like to build. What's that blue sky scenario? We are going to have to put together a map and provide it to the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, showing how we're going to connect every last broadband serviceable location that is unserved. And so in order to do that, we've got to have a pretty good understanding of which providers would like to serve which areas. And so a lot of this is going to be part of the initial and final plan creation that we'll be doing in the latter quarter of 2023 and the full year of 2024. But it's never too early to start those conversations with our office about how a provider, or how a group of providers, or how a local community or other eligible applicants might like to work with us, receive grant funding, or drive private investment to fill in the map. We've got to have a really good understanding of how those pieces fit together, and we're happy to start those conversations now. And so hopefully that's not more information than you or others were looking for today, but that's the name of the game here in the next year, is putting that map together and putting those pieces of the puzzle together so that we drive connectivity everywhere.
Great. We have another question here about what are roles for local neighborhood dashboards, which can assist school, health, libraries, and community college areas in understanding and using maps. What might be timetables for adoption by READY, the county, and K through 12 and Navigator area outreach parties?
Yeah, Leighton, I love this question, and I love the idea of using our mapping and our data to do this sort of thing. We've got scores of dashboards that we have created at the regional and local level for the state and for stakeholders. And I think what we would like to do is empower local communities and neighborhoods and other stakeholders to use our data, to use our mapping to help us innovate on this front. And so I would just say now is a great time to be thinking about how we can leverage the data that we make available. And if there's a neighborhood organization or another entity that would like to help us put together some great dashboards that could be particularly useful at the local level, we would love to lean into that. And so it really is a collaborative, I think, opportunity. It's probably one right now that's going to be driven at the local level. So come to us with your ideas, and we'll try to support them through our data and mapping.
And I think I just want to add to what Matt shared. We're also internally working on dashboards at different geographies. So that, again, that can be useful for like counties and school districts. So that's a work in progress, and we want to make sure that it's most useful when we put it out there. So, expecting something by the end of the year. That's pretty much the timeline as of now. But as Matt mentioned, if there are other organizations who would like to lean into these resources now, we certainly have beta versions of the dashboard at the county level, at the legislative districts level. So reach out to us if there's specific information that could be helpful to you. There's also the ACP tools that we've been talking about in other webinars. So if there's outreach with respect to that, we certainly have resources. So feel free to reach out to us, and we can point you to some of the resources that we are kind of creating or are in the works.
And Shabika, that's a great point. Our Broadband Lab website is hosting a number of those dashboards right now, particularly at the county level. And so that could be a good model for others that might like to innovate at the more local level. But again, we'd love to support this moving forward as best we can.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. I'm going to go ahead and put the link in for that. And I'm also going to include the Connections newsletter link, which is just a great way to get updates. We got those state partners that are always just collating information into that and making sure the word gets out for things, even including the future webinars as well. We have a few more questions, and I think we have time for a few more questions. And while we're doing that, it looks like Mike has put a poll up on the screen. Go ahead and click on your screen. This just helps us know that we're providing education and that the information's relevant. We do this for a lot of our programs. So thank you, Mike, for doing that. And sometimes we're hit or miss on whether we evaluate our effectiveness on knowledge gain for folks. So appreciate the feedback.
Great.
Another question about training programs. So this is a great question. And it would be a miracle to know about what all might be going on in different parts of the state in regards to training and workforce development for broadband infrastructure deployment. But any sort of tips or any word that you're hearing on what kind of training opportunities are out there?
Yeah, this is a great question. And I guess it relates to mapping and data, because you can map or collect data on just about everything related to broadband and digital equity. And so this is a big part of the equation for any Office of Broadband or state moving forward. And so what we've been doing is trying to identify provider-led opportunities that are out there. Obviously, with Illinois, we have our Illinois Works Apprenticeship Program. And so that's something that we're very serious about and we need to leverage for broadband. Also, our local community and technical colleges, where there are programs that have been stood up to help with broadband workforce development. I can just tell you there's a number of internal conversations taking place right now, talking about and exploring how we might leverage some of those otherwise disparate local efforts and invest in them to scale, replicate around the state. I think it's important when you look at our map, you can anticipate that there are areas of the state that are really going to need, workforce, crews, and workers. And so I think investing in community or technical college programs in those areas is important. But counter to that, broadband and this kind of work can be very regional and cross state lines, particularly with construction seasons varying from one part of the country or state to the next. And so I think it's that balance between trying to invest in very local initiatives that might meet the needs of a given region within the state, and also looking at how Illinois fits into the big picture in the Midwest. And so I think we're spending a lot of time on this. If anybody has any recommendations for us, we are all ears, but this is going to absolutely be a big part of the equation and how we get things right here in the years ahead.
And we have we have 2 more minutes left. And if anyone has any questions related to the mapping topic for today's webinar, please put that in there and I'll move it up on the list. We are happy to address those. We have 2 more questions here that I've got. If a company has replaced, this kind of regards the public-private partnership and what the public's portion of that should do or the part of that should do. If a company has placed a request for funding, but has not communicated anything to us about their grant request or any details, how would you recommend we address that?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's one of the reasons we have the mapping review process. If you're a county, a local government, a stakeholder, and you have invested time in a vision, a plan, a proposal, a partnership for building out broadband in your area, and you see a different proposal on our map that is incongruent with your vision or all the planning that you've invested in, let us know. If a county or a local government has passed a resolution supporting a grant application or a partnership with a provider or providers, let us know. A lot of times that information is included in a particular grant application, but as you're looking at the field, we want that kind of feedback through this mapping review process. Again, we are so committed to making sure that what we invest in is community driven. I don't want to fund projects where the community, the local government is not aware that they're taking place. We want that community voice to be included from the get-go. And so please take advantage of this if you're a resident, a local leader, involved at the local level in any way.
All right. And you might have heard the little ding there. We're at 1 o'clock. Again, just a big thank you to our presenters today. I do see this question here. What about providing free access to childcare, low income areas and 501c3? Yeah, if you want to go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Just real quick. I mean, I think that there's a difference between providing free access and ensuring that a broadband serviceable location has the ability to subscribe to an affordable, high quality broadband service. And so we are absolutely committed to the latter and making sure that there are affordable, high quality broadband options available everywhere in the state. As it comes to providing free access to different, we'll call them community anchor institutions, for instance, I think that's something that's going to be part of our planning process for the use of BEAD funds moving forward. I would just say I think there is a difference in a higher bar for providing free broadband versus ensuring that there's high quality, affordable broadband. That latter point we are absolutely committed to.
So very grateful to have you both on today. A lot of great information out there. If you have additional questions, it's broadband@illinois.gov, and we'll be happy to have you both back. And thank you again. And thanks to all our participants for a great session today.
Thank you, Nancy.
Thanks, Nancy.